In this video, I'm going to be talking about compressors and how to use them. I'm going to be using it on a vocal, but it's in essence a compressor is an automatic gain reduction tool, and it affects the dynamic range. Now, dynamic range is the difference between the loudest and the quietest an instrument makes, and what it essentially is doing, it compresses the ceiling, the loudest volume, but also then raises the floor to make up for the gain reduction, and therefore that's how the dynamic range is then narrowed. Okay, so we've got the threshold here, and threshold is the point at which the compressor will begin to work once the signal is exceeded that. So if I just click in at a value of 25 dB, there we go. So you'll see that there's the line, there's my threshold mark. Anything beneath this the compressor will not touch, anything above that the compressor will then act upon it. I've got my attack time set at 7.7 milliseconds per minute. So I'm going to hit play, and we can then watch and then listen to the difference between the compressor being on and off.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high.
You can see here, it's on average, it's about -3 to about -5 gain reduction. If I play the same thing without,
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time.
so at the moment there's not a massive amount of difference because to do the attack, it's open, it's allowing some of the transients through initially. If I increase the attack, it basically is how fast the compressor will work once that threshold's been exceeded. So now I'm going to ramp this all the way up to as fast as it will go. Now listen to the difference.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high.
The volume is now gone, and now we're probably hitting about -8, -9 in terms of actually gain reduction. So we've lost a lot of volume as well, and it's sounding a bit duller as well, where it's compressing heavily. So now we've got to try and do is find the happy medium where it's compressing, but not kind of robbing the vocal of its tonality as well. So I'm going to reduce the attack.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time. And I don't know what to do, falling harder every time.
Here it's just starting to feel a bit more controlled. Again, if I open the attack even further,
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high.
only certain words it's picking up. It's not really working at all now because it's 76, 78 milliseconds. It's kind of been and gone before it can act. I'm quite liking the sort of the round about the sort of 8.5 millisecond sort of point.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high.
It just feels controlled at this point. The other thing that can adjust and the sound of the compressor is the ratio. Now at the moment, I've got it set 2:1. So what this means is that for every 2 dB that goes over the threshold, 1 dB comes out. So if, for example, if it's hitting -6 here, because the value is 2 divided by 6, essentially you've got 3. So there's 3 dB that's coming back out in terms of the volume. So we need to kind of use a makeup gain to make up for that loss. So, but if you increase the value, you start to see that the compression gets heavier and more sort of aggressive, and sort of anywhere up to about 5 is seen as light compression. 5 to about 8 is then deemed to be sort of medium compression, and then 8 and above up to about 12 is then seen to be sort of heavy compression, and then beyond 12 we start getting into limiter territory, which is basically what a limiter is a brick wall compressor. But in terms of a vocal, anywhere between sort of 2 and 4 is a good sort of starting point. So I'm going to put it on 4 there.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time.
So now the release is set for once the signal drops beneath the threshold, how long it stays on for, and that again alters the tonality. Now it's more obvious when dealing with things like drums with fast transients because it can affect then the background bleed as well. But at the moment, I'm going to leave it where it is because that seems to be cool. And I'm going to just then increase the makeup gain. And I'm going to go between the bypass and the gain to try and get a balanced level. So
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time.
it's a bit much there, I think.
And I don't know what to do, falling harder every time I look at you. Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time.
So what I'm doing there is trying to get a balance between the compressor being on and off and the gain, so the signal coming in. And what should happen is that once you find that balance and everything, the difference will be is a much more consistent performance. The final thing then is the knee, and the knee is to do with the characteristic of the compressor. Hard knee means that once the signal hits that threshold, the compressor will then come in and then sort of work straight away. Whereas if you soften the knee, it will then actually allow the compressor to work even before that threshold, just mildly. So it kind of introduces it much more gently. And then as the signal gets into that, then it'll start to kind of ramp up. So if I demonstrate that.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time.
Just reduce the threshold to show this as well. So
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high, overdosing every time. And I don't know what to do.
so now I'm going to adjust the knee and watch then the gain reduction.
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time. Something about you gets me high.
So up here at the 17:1, I'm just going to just make it a bit more obvious. So up here at 19, if I have it a really fast and sort of hard knee,
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time.
it's just about working. If I make it a soft knee,
Something about you makes me smile, sends me soaring every time.
then the gain reduction is much more. It just plays with the characteristic and the tonality of it. It depends on how aggressive you want the compressor to be. And again, play with that. And it's much more apparent when using it on, say, transient sort of instruments. But there we go. There's an overview of compression and how to use it. Thing to do is play with it in its extremes. So bring the attack as fast as you can and then lengthen it as long as you can. Same with the release. And then play with the threshold as well and that balance. And then don't forget to use the bypass to kind of then balance between a compressed sound and then the uncompressed sound using the makeup gain.